The first scream cut through the rain like a blade, sharp and desperate, and it froze everyone on the street except the man who caused it. He didn't even flinch. He stood under the flickering amber glow of a broken streetlight, tailored coat spotless despite the storm, eyes cold with the confidence of someone who had never been told no and never paid the price when he crossed the line. Evan Moretti, son of a man whose name made judges hesitate and witnesses forget, had learned early that the world bent when he pushed hard enough. Tonight, he pushed too far. Officer Lena Carter had been on patrol for 10 hours, her feet aching, her thoughts drifting toward home, and the dog waiting there who always sensed her mood before she spoke. She was the kind of officer who remembered names, who knelt to talk to kids on stoops, who believed that calm words could defuse almost anything. When dispatch crackled with a call about a disturbance near the docks, she turned the cruiser without hesitation. She didn't know that this night would tear a clean line through her life, dividing before from after. Ranger sat alert in the back, a sable German shepherd with intelligent eyes and a stillness that came from trust. He wasn't just a canine. He was her partner. They had trained together through blistering summers and bone-cold winters. Learned each other's rhythms, each other's fears. Ranger knew the sound of Lena's breath when she was calm and when she was afraid. Tonight, as rain drummed against the roof, he sensed the tension before the cruiser stopped. Evan had been arguing with a dock worker, a man twice his age with grease-stained hands and a voice that trembled as he tried to explain he hadn't done anything wrong. Evan's friends hovered nearby, laughing too loudly, filming on their phones. When Lena stepped out of the cruiser and announced herself, the laughter softened but didn't stop. Evan turned, his smile thin and amused, as if this were a performance staged for him. "Sir," Lena said, keeping her voice steady, "I need everyone to calm down and step back." Evan looked at Ranger, then back at Lena, and something ugly flickered in his eyes. "Cute dog," he said. "You always bring backup because you're scared?" Lena ignored the jab. She'd heard worse. She moved between Evan and the dock worker, positioning herself the way she'd been trained. A human shield meant to de-escalate. Ranger stayed close, silent, muscles coiled but controlled. What happened next unfolded faster than memory could catch. Evan lunged, not at Lena, but at Ranger, his hand flashing with something metallic. Lena shouted, instinct overriding thought, pulling Ranger back as she reached for Evan's arm. The blade caught her forearm instead. Pain bloomed hot and immediate. Ranger reacted, barking, moving to protect, but Evan's friends surged forward, chaos erupting as someone shoved Lena hard enough that she fell. The world tilting, rain and lights blurring. By the time sirens wailed closer, Evan had stepped back, hands raised, his expression already shifting into practiced innocence. His friends melted away into the night. Lena lay on the wet pavement, blood mixing with rain. Ranger standing over her, growling low, refusing to let anyone near until backup arrived. The news cycle chewed the story raw by morning. Officer injured in dockside altercation. Evan's name appeared and disappeared, blurred by careful wording and influential phone calls. Lena spent the night in surgery, and the next weeks in recovery, her arm wrapped, her dreams haunted by the flash of metal and the look in Evan's eyes when he realized just for a moment that he'd gone too far. Ranger was cleared physically, but something had changed. He startled more easily, paced at night, pressed closer to Lena, as if guarding against something unseen. She stroked his fur, and whispered reassurances she wasn't sure she believed herself. The case stalled. Evidence went missing. Witnesses recanted. Lena watched the updates with a tight jaw, anger simmering beneath the surface of her usual patience. She believed in the system, but belief didn't mean blindness. She felt small against the machinery that protected men like Evan Moretti. 3 states away, on a quiet stretch of coast, Jack Hale woke before dawn to the steady rhythm of the ocean and the ache that never quite left his joints. Retirement from the Navy SEALs hadn't dulled his instincts. It had only given them room to breathe. He ran every morning, lifted weights in a garage that smelled of salt and oil, and volunteered afternoons at a community center, teaching kids discipline and confidence through boxing drills and teamwork. He didn't talk about his past much. People knew he'd served. They didn't know the weight he carried or the faces that visited him in dreams. Jack saw the news clip while waiting in line for coffee. He recognized the look in Lena's eyes from the hospital photo, shock wrapped around resolve. He recognized the pattern too. Power flexing, consequences evaporating. It stirred something he'd tried to set down when he left the teams. He didn't act right away. He never did. He read everything he could. Followed the quiet threads that didn't make headlines. He learned about Lena's reputation, about Ranger, about the dock worker who'd fled town after receiving warnings. He learned about Evan's father and the reach of his influence. And he learned about the gaps, places where attention faltered, where truth could slip through if someone was willing to hold the line. Jack drove east in an old truck that rattled like it had stories of its own. He didn't announce himself when he arrived in the city. He checked into a modest motel, ate alone, listened more than he spoke. At the community center near Lena's precinct, he volunteered to help repair a damaged fence. He met people who knew her, who spoke of her kindness, the way she brought donuts on night shifts, and stayed late to help paperwork-bound rookies. He watched Ranger from the distance one afternoon when Lena brought him by for a visit. Saw the way the dog's posture shifted when strangers moved too quickly. Jack didn't need permission to help. He needed timing. The unexpected turn came quietly. Evan Moretti, restless and offended that the world hadn't snapped back into its old shape fast enough, decided to make a show of things. He returned to the docks one night with a different audience, intent on proving that nothing and no one could touch him. He didn't expect a retired SEAL to be watching from the shadows, or a canine to recognize a threat before it took form. Jack didn't intervene like a movie hero. He didn't throw punches or shout. He stepped into the light, just enough to be seen, and used a voice honed by years of command to call out names, dates, details Evan hadn't realized anyone knew. He spoke of patterns and consequences, of how lines crossed had a way of drawing attention from places Evan's father couldn't reach. He spoke calmly, compassion threaded through the steel, not as a threat, but as a truth. Evan laughed at first. Then he faltered. Jack didn't mention violence. He mentioned choice. Lena arrived moments later, responding to another call. Her arms still ached in the cold, but she stood tall. Ranger was with her, steady now, eyes locked on Evan. The dock worker was there too, having returned after Jack helped him secure a lawyer and a place to stay. Cameras appeared again, but this time the lens caught a different story. Evan snapped. He shouted, accused, tried to push past Lena, and Ranger moved, controlled and precise, placing himself between danger and his partner without a single bark. The restraint, the discipline, spoke louder than chaos ever could. Jack stepped forward, not to restrain Evan, but to place a hand on his shoulder. The touch was gentle. Evan recoiled as if burned. For a split second, his bravado cracked, revealing a young man shaped by fear and expectation, by a legacy he hadn't chosen but had worn like armor. "You don't have to be this," Jack said quietly. "You can stop." Something shifted. It wasn't redemption. It was awareness. Evan looked around and saw not enemies, but witnesses. People who would remember this moment. He pulled back, hands trembling, and for the first time, complied. The legal aftermath didn't resolve overnight. Power doesn't release its grip easily. But the story changed. Evidence resurfaced. Witnesses stood firm. Public pressure mounted, fueled not by outrage alone, but by the visible humanity of an officer who refused to hate and a dog who embodied loyalty without aggression. Lena visited Jack at the motel before he left. She thanked him, awkward and sincere, and he shrugged it off with a small smile. Ranger pressed his head into Jack's hand, accepting the affection like an old friend. "What made you help?" Lena asked. Jack looked out at the rain-soaked street, the city breathing around them. "I've seen what happens when no one does," he said. "And I've seen what happens when one person decides to stand anyway." Months later, Lena returned to full duty. Ranger's restlessness faded, replaced by confidence, sharpened by experience. The dock worker opened a small repair shop with community support. Evan entered a plea that surprised everyone and began a long, uneven road toward accountability. Jack drove back to the coast, his work unseen by most, but his heart lighter than it had been in years. The story that lingered wasn't about a fight or a fall. It was about a line crossed and a line held. About strength that chose restraint, power that chose compassion, and the quiet, stubborn belief that humanity, when someone dares to act, can still turn the tables. Gets.